Guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings tight end picks for week 14. There are actually 5 guys that are going to be on the list this week, so let's call it up and take a look at who we got. The 5 guys that we're going to be looking at the tight end position are Austin Seferian-Jenkins at 2,700, Laney Walker at 5,600, Greg Olson at 6,900, and Tyler Eifert at 5,600. I'm also going to throw in an honorable mention. We do this video early in the week, usually on Tuesday. I don't know exactly what Gronk's status is going to be for this weekend, but if Gronk is out, Scott Chandler also is going to make a decent play at 3,800. The first guy we're going to talk about is Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He's favored in a high total game going up against the New Orleans Saints pass defense, who's been basically lit up by everybody so far this year. New Orleans has allowed the most fantasy points on the season to the tight end position, so Jenkins is definitely in a good spot here at only 2,700. Played a lot of snaps in his first game back active, and he should see even more snaps going forward. He should also see more targets too. He only had 6 last weekend, which even at 2,700 is still a pretty decent amount. He's a big target, so he's also a red zone threat. And at 2,700, there's a lot of upside using him in the tournament this week. The next guy we're going to talk about is Laney Walker at 5,600. It's not a great matchup for him going up against the New York Jets, but he's been the best tight end in the league over the last few weeks. Only 2 games all season has he been below 12.2 fantasy points, and he's averaging over 16 fantasy points per game. Since week 1 injury, where he left the game early and then sat out week 2, he's played 10 games, has 83 targets, 64 catches, and 750 yards. That means he's averaging 6.5 catches on a little bit below 8.5 targets for 75 yards a game since that injury that he suffered in week 1 that kept him out for week 2. Like I said, he's been one of the best tight ends in the league lately, and 5,600 for a guy who's averaging 16 fantasy points is not too much to ask. The next guy we're going to talk about is Greg Olson. He faces an Atlanta team who has given up the 10th most fantasy points to the tight end position. He is the most targeted tight end in the NFL right now. Has at least 12 fantasy points in 9 of the 12 games he's played so far this season. Is averaging 16.5 fantasy points per game. And he's a big red zone threat for Cam Newton in that offense. He's a guy that gets a couple catches every game for you, racks up some yardage. And as we said, he's definitely a red zone threat, so he does have the potential to score touchdowns. His price is getting a little high at 6,900, but I think that only is going to help keep his ownership down for this weekend. He's in a good matchup. He is the favorite target of his quarterback, and he is on the team that's favored to win that game. So he could still have an upside game here today, even at the high price with low ownership. The last guy we're going to talk about is Tyler Eifert. If Tyler Eifert is healthy, he's going to be a very nice option at 5,600. Pittsburgh allows the 5th most fantasy points to the tight end position, and they have a very solid run defense. So the path of least resistance is to try to throw the ball against them. And whenever Cincinnati throws, we know that Eifert's a guy that they look at in the red zone. He's been a TD machine this year with 12 touchdowns, and that accounts for over 25% of the catches that he's made so far this year. He has 46 catches on the season. 12 of them have gone for 6 points. So he's going to be somebody else we can look at here. And as I said, honorable mention, you're going to look at a guy like Scott Chandler, but only if you can get Rob Gronkowski out this week. If Gronk is out, Chandler is below $4,000, put up 16 fantasy points last week on the back of a touchdown and a couple catches. Didn't really have a huge game, but again, he's very cheap, and he's a tight end in a high-powered passing offense, so he would be the only other guy that I would look to consider here. So that pretty much wraps it up for our tight end video for the week. These are the guys who we're going to be looking at. Obviously, we do these videos early in the week, so make sure you check back and make sure that there are no situations where, you know, somebody got injured, somebody was sitting out practice, or, you know, even in the case of the Gronk and Chandler thing, make sure that Gronk is definitely out before you decide that you're going to roll Chandler in your lineup. But we think that these are going to be some of the higher scoring tight ends we have on the weekend and some of the guys that you're going to want in your roster in order to get to the top. So this has been our DraftKings tight end video here at rotocurve.com. Thank you for joining me. And as always, stay classy, DFS.